when you look at these pieces, I want you to think like David. I want you to have confidence. We need compassion. We need to dream about things that seem impossible, and we need to see ourselves as difference makers who can overcome great odds. And that's really the message that I want to send today. So I'd like to open up to any questions if you have any, and then feel free to take a stroll by and say hi to these guys. Yes?
How many hours do you think total?
That's a great question. I purposely do not keep track of hours because I feel like it would, I wouldn't want to do it if I looked at the hours. So it was a 3-year process, but I do commission work at the same time, so it was, that 3 years was broken up into sections of a couple months at a time until, so it was like 2 months, it was a summer 2 years ago, and then 2 months in between, and then once March rolled around and I work in the school system, we were sent home to work remotely. I started in earnest and cranked about 7 months out. So I work 3 to 4 days a week, probably no more than 2 hours at a time. Yes?
Could you talk about the structure for the strap on David and the sling?
Yes, sure. Both of these things are kind of, they trick the eye a little bit. The strap on the bag is, it's oak strap, it's oak, what do they call it? Edging. It's oak edging. You can get it at Home Depot. And it's basically 1 inch wide and it's on a roll. And it's usually very, very thin, but I doubled it up. And it actually is very stiff when you, the final product. The sling is just a light gauge, almost the thickness of a coat hanger, and it's metal. And that was another interesting artistic choice. I saw a lot of pictures of David with the sling being loose, but I also thought that if it's taut, it really gives that feeling of tension and the power behind that sling. That's a great question. Thank you.
Do you write down, little girl?
Yes. Which,
Thank you.
Ben Colstrom.
Go ahead. Go with her first.
Did you make the glass statue out of one piece of wood, or did it take many pieces?
That's a great question. It takes many pieces of wood, and mostly it's because of the expense. It's really hard to get a refrigerator-sized piece of basswood delivered to your house. Maybe someday. But you also have to work with the grain, and so if you come up closer later, you can kind of see where the pieces have been joined a little bit. And sometimes making a sculpture, a wood sculpture out of one piece of wood is problematic. I had one shatter in the mail one time because I wasn't cognizant of the grain. You want to make the grain work for you. And basically what that means is just grain goes either horizontally or vertically. So I designed the top of David so that the grain was going horizontally. So that's the strength of the wood. If it was going vertically, his arm would knock off if I hit him into something. And I only learned that by having stuff break. Yes, PJ?
So did you finish, like, when you're in your process, did you finish one before the other, or did you kind of go back and forth working on both of them?
No, I had to finish Goliath first. Yeah. And then I did David. Yeah. Who had?
This young lady asked my question.
Oh, she did. Wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not carving it out of one piece. That's how the old masters did it, but for practical reasons, it makes a lot more sense to piece it together. Yeah. Yeah.
In looking at Goliath's head, did you create the block of wood that you needed to carve and then do the entire helmet, everything from that, or did you actually make pieces that you appended to?
Yes. The question was about constructing the head. That's all one piece. I do pretend, I don't want to pull back the curtain too much, but I do prefer it to be able to work on the heads three-dimensionally And so oftentimes, even in those pieces, the heads are done separately and then put on. Yes, his whole hat is one piece, or the entire head. So I had to get in there and do some work. Yeah. And actually, not to go too far on this, but I had a lot of feedback from people that I had an art teacher say, "You've got to show your work to somebody other than your mom." So, because they'll tell you the truth, right? And so I had a couple of great pieces of advice, and one of them was from my friend Roy over here. My original iteration of Goliath's mask actually he had a nose piece that went over his nose, and he says, "John, that's great, but when David lets the stone loose, it's got to hit Goliath in the forehead." So we fixed that. And then, well, there are other things and part of that is the length of the project. There was nothing impulsive. I had plenty of time to think about what worked and let it kind of rise to the surface. Yes, Linda.
Probably I missed this in your talk, Tom, but what was your inspiration?
Yeah, I'll briefly just mention it again. Clearly, I love the story from the Bible. It's one of my favorites. But as a coach, it's something that I think about a lot, confronting odds and having confidence and believing in who you are and what you can bring as opposed to perceived being inadequate, feeling like you don't have what it takes. And we all feel that at times. Yeah. Yes, Jim.
John, you mentioned as an educator, do you carry some of your art, the things you're talking about? I, as a parent, now a grandparent, would want a child to hear this and think alongside you. Do you take your art into your work in school?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's I have to. Some of the there's FERPA rules, so I can't
Yeah.
actually go into a whole lot of depth. Just privacy rules about what goes on in the classroom, but yeah, sure. I mean, I think about when I was in high school, and I think no matter how much somebody looks like they have it together on the outside, we all have inadequacies, and some people are really good at hiding that. But yeah, definitely for sure. I think that's one of the most important things you can help somebody with is realizing that they can contribute something that's no one else can. Yeah. Yeah.
Oftentimes for large sculptures, there's a smaller model that
Yes.
that the sculptor works from.
Yeah.
Did you go through that process?
I did not, but I will say that I did a lot of drawing. I did a lot of drawing to figure out exactly what I wanted. I don't know. I've done maquettes. A maquette is a small kind of model that you want to work from in the past, but part of me just is raring to go. I just get excited. I tend to power through a project instead of trying to get it like really perfect before I start. It's just I want to jump in, get going. Do I make mistakes? Yes, I make mistakes, but they're not nearly as big as they used to be. That's the way I work. But, hey, I'd like to invite anybody to walk through here and take a look. And thank you very much for